"Welcome, dear." The boy's name was Emil, and no one knew exactly when he had fallen asleep, but some said it was under the ancient olive tree near the edge of the world, where time ran differently and dreams stretched for miles. Emil had always been quiet, his eyes full of stars and old stories, and one evening, while chasing a moth between the shadows of stone ruins, he lay down among the wild thyme and slept, and as he did, the earth itself seemed to hush, as if it, to wish to hear his dreaming first. He dreamed of Sumer, where scribes in linen robes pressed symbols into soft clay under a sun that never hurried, and he floated over canals lined with reeds, where children sang lullabies to the river. Gods and candles flickered on tiny wooden boats. Then the sand shifted and he drifted into Egypt, where temples hummed with incense and soft chants echoed across the Nile, and he watched as artisans painted tomb walls with gentle scenes of lotus flowers, harvests, and celestial boat seamals. Breath matched the rhythm of the river, slow and sure, as a priest brushed a star chart with quiet reverence, naming constellations that only dreamers knew. And on he slept as Babylon rose around him, its hanging gardens bursting with scent and color, and as a cool breeze played among the palms, he passed unnoticed beneath arches and among the scholars who mapped the stars and whispered truths to the stones. Time was gentle in Emil's sleep. He never aged, only floated forward, arriving next in Athens at twilight, where philosophers spoke softly in the shade of olive groves, and students dozed with scrolls open in their laps, the wind rustling the pages like a lullaby, and marble glowed pink in the evening light as statues watched the sea. Then came Rome, wrapped in laurel and laughter, where children skipped past fountains, and Emil curled near a courtyard. An old poet recited verses by lamplight to a dozing cat. He did not stir as emperors came and went, nor when towers crumbled and streets changed, for Emil was part of the dream now, not merely in it. He slept through the hush of monasteries in the misty hills of Gaul, where monks with tired eyes inked their quiet prayers into golden manuscripts, and the only sound was the slow scrape of quills and the distant toll of bells. And he dreamed, next of Baghdad beneath stars, where scholars in silk robes shared stories beside cool marble pools, and astronomers charted galaxies in candle light, as if drawing maps to Emil's resting place. As centuries unfolded like petals, he drifted through forests and fortresses, hearing the lull of lutes in Moorish gardens, the chants of traders crossing desert roads, and the hush of snow falling outside a Kyoto tea house where an old woman whispered a legend into her tea. He dreamed through the rise of castles, where fires crackled and children pressed close to hear tales of dragons and gentle knights who protected orchards from the wind, and he did not wake as ships were built, and sails filled with air, carrying spices and lullabies across oceans, nor when great cities grew, their spires soft in the fog. Emil passed through the soft quiet of a Gutenberg workshop where the first printed words dried like magic on pages still warm, through Vienna where Mozart played notes so light they brushed against the stars, and through a calm summer morning in Paris where an artist painted a sleeping child in a field of lavender. Revolutions came and faded like sighs, wars rumbled far away like distant storms, and still Emil slept, tucked in the corner of time, his breath steady as the turning of the moon. He passed unseen through the gaslit evenings of Dickens' London, the dusty peace of an American prairie schoolhouse, the hush of a railway carriage crossing India under starlight, and the flickering glow of a lantern-lit bookstore in Tokyo where a child, not unlike Emil, read ancient poems aloud to her cat, as the rain tapped gently on the roof. Through all this, Emil slept on, the boy who never stirred, whose dreams stitched the empires together like silk thread through centuries. He did not wake when the world changed its clothes from horse to iron, from candlelight to electricity, from parchment to screen, for he was not dreaming of progress or power, but of places where the world still whispered, where footsteps on old stone echoed like lullabies, and where the hearts of people beat softly in the dark. And finally, as the stars above turned once more in their great silent clock, Emil's eyes fluttered open not with surprise, but with calm understanding, as if he had always known he would awake when the time was quiet again. And he sat up, beneath the same ancient olive tree where he had first closed his eyes, though now it stood beside a field of wildflowers and ruins smoothed by wind, and the world was quieter, gentler, as if waiting for a story. Emil smiled, brushing time from his hair, and looked up at the moon, which had been watching him all along, and in that soft moment between dream and waking, past and future, he whispered a thank you to the sleeping empires and the people who had walked gently through history, and then stood, barefoot, to walk once more through a world made of stories. And so Emil walked, not hurriedly, but with the soft pace of someone who had no need to chase time, for time, it seemed, had followed him faithfully through every century he had ever dreamt, and now the world itself felt hushed, as if awaiting his quiet return. The air was gentler, the hills rounder, and even the birds seemed to glide instead of fly, as though they too were part of the dream that never quite ended. Emil passed through a grove where old stone pillars lay covered in moss, and the ground beneath his feet held the memory of sandals and hoofbeats and children's laughter that had long since faded into the soil. He passed an orchard blooming from the roots of what was once a fortress wall, and the petals that floated through the air felt like pages of unwritten stories, each one carrying a whisper from the past. He wandered through a valley where the vines carried the scent of 1,000 forgotten meals, warm bread from a Roman bakery, spiced stew from a Tang Dynasty kitchen, honey cakes from a Hebrew village at dusk, all of it drifting like the memory of comfort, quiet and deep. In the distance, he saw an old woman seated beside a clay oven, humming a song in a language no one had spoken in centuries, and though her face was lined with time, her eyes glowed with the same kindness he had seen in the streets of Babylon. And on the steps of Mayan temples, he sat beside her, and she handed him a fig wrapped in a leaf, smiling without words, and they shared a silence that felt older than empires. When the sun dipped behind the hills, Emil continued on, past rivers that remembered the trade of silk and stories, past meadows where once Persian poets had laid with reed pens and dreams of eternity, and he arrived at a quiet village that had no name, only lanterns glowing in windows and music played with such gentleness it seemed like the night itself was sighing. There was a small room with a low bed and a feathered quilt stitched with constellations, and Emil lay down once more, not to escape the world this time, but to hold it. He had seen its rise and rest, its golden ages and its humble moments, and he had kept it all safely in the vault of his sleep. Outside, an owl called softly, and the stars blinked like old friends returning home. And in that final moment, Emil did not think of kings or conquests, but of hands passing bread, of poems murmured beside flickering oil lamps, of lullabies sung in forgotten dialects beneath the same moon that watched over them all. He closed his eyes, not because he was tired, but because peace had found him at last. And as he drifted into a deeper, quieter sleep, the world exhaled with him, gentle and whole, and though no one knew exactly where he had gone, some said the boy who slept through empires had become a dream himself, a soft presence in the night wind, a shimmer in starlight, a voice heard faintly between the pages of time, guiding those who walk gently, listen deeply, and remember that even the greatest histories begin with silence.